And welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. These folks have a sale on right now on bar stools, kitchen stools, etc. It's fantastic. But they also have a Palliser upholstery event that's going on now through Tuesday. All their Palliser upholstery is on sale, and they have tons and tons of options. I put just a couple of the rows of their options from their website there in that graphic. They got more choices than that. I have a couple of their Palliser home theater seats, got them 4 years ago, and they are still perfect. I've loved them. So stools on sale, Palliser home theater seats on sale, but now you got to get out there quickly. The Games and Things, corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road. All right. Most people think the SEC East Championship is going to come down to Georgia's November visit to Knoxville. Home game or not, it's going to be a tough challenge for the Volunteers, and here's why. Let me show you something about Georgia. In case you didn't know this, they are 29-1 the last 2 seasons, 15-0 SEC and national champions last year, of course, 14-1 national champions the year before. Their only loss out of those 30 games the last 2 years was by 17 to Alabama in the 2021 SEC title game. Even more impressive, out of those 30 teams they played, only 4 others, aside from Alabama, have even stayed within 10 points of Georgia. Missouri, 4 last year. Kentucky, 10 last year. Ohio State in that 1-point great game in the semifinals last year. Clemson, 7 points. I believe that was the opener 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. That's it. They not only beat everybody, they beat everybody down. And going back to last year, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but there were a lot of people who walked out of there saying, well, 2 touchdown loss. You got a gimme touchdown at the end that was trash. That was not as close as the score looked at the end. They were like a boa constrictor, and they choked out your offense. That your offense didn't get choked out a lot last year.
Got rainy, and they took the air out of the ball.
Or it would have been worse, yeah. So here's the question. What chance, and again, we'll play meteorologist here. You mentioned rain. Percentage chance Tennessee knocks off Georgia, Neyland Stadium, late November. Vince Ferrara.
Well, did you see the trend of those within 10 points? I mean, 1 in 2021, 3 last year.
So that'll be 6 or 7.
And Tennessee can be I think it will be a closer, more competitive game. Certainly Neyland Stadium is a part of that. I wonder if the second year of losing a ton of guys to the NFL maybe brings Georgia down just a hair, but the schedule was so easy for them. I do think Tennessee is the toughest game on their schedule. I would say 35-ish%. I think Tennessee has a chance, but I wouldn't put it around 50-50 or anything like that.
What do you think, Josh?
I do agree that it's going to be a more competitive game, and once they went out there, it was like, oh, Tennessee has no shot to win in Athens. Tennessee's going to have a shot, I think, to win in Knoxville. To put a percentage, I'll probably go a little lower, but I say 25 because I'll say if they play 4 times, I think Tennessee gets them once. So I'll say a 25% shot to beat Georgia, which is a better shot than just about everybody.
Well, I was about to say, there are going to be people out there who are like, you're not giving a chance to beat Georgia. Well, we're not giving anybody a chance to beat Georgia. That was the point of those numbers, 29-1. Mm-hmm. It would be hard to see many teams with more than a 20 or 25% chance of beating Georgia, if you're being honest. David, what's the percentage chance?
I don't know what you guys are watching. I'd say 10 to 15. I think Georgia, last year they downgraded from having the best defense in the last decade of football to merely having the best defense in the country and won the national championship again. I think people really are underestimating the possible upgrade they will have at offense this year. You got to answer your question at quarterback, which is an issue. Is Carson Beck that guy? Mm-hmm. But around him, Branson Robinson might be a household name very soon. You add Missouri's best receiver, Mississippi State's best receiver. Yeah. You still have a guy named Brock Bowers, who might be the best prospect in the entire league.
Good offensive line.
Offensively, I think Georgia's going to be a nightmare this year, and the defense is going to be still probably the best in the country. So, Malachi Stark's still sticking around. You still have a ton of pieces there. So I would say probably 10, 12. Georgia's just a nightmare matchup because they have the athletes to go pound for pound with you, and they understand schematically how to stop you.
Bob Hodge.
I'm going to go 50-50 that Tennessee can keep it within 10 points. I'm more in line with Dave. I think Tennessee's got a shot. They'll have a shot depending if all the pieces have fallen into place getting to the Georgia game earlier in the season. And if Tennessee's looking on the good side of the expectations, I think they'll have a shot. But I don't think it would be 1-3 or 1-4. I think it would probably be closer if Tennessee played them 10 times they'd win one.
I'm with Bob on this. I really last year, like that switch release concept that Tennessee runs like 10 times a game is not schematic. It stresses your defenses out. But Alabama looked so lost, and Georgia.
If you've got the players,
Yes.
and Georgia also just said, well, you're trying to make us have a choice. We're just going to go ahead and take this choice. If you want to run it.
Yes.
And they didn't.
Yes.
And it shut them down. It'll be interesting to see how Tennessee
And they can
handles
slow down
what
the
Georgia
run.
did.
They can slow down that run game with 5 guys. They
Yes.
have great athletes on the
Yeah.
outside. It's just Georgia's a terrible matchup for Tennessee. Like it's
They're
not
a terrible
good
matchup for everybody.
This is true. Yes.
I mean, the question I have is, can they replace Stetson Bennett? Everyone's like, well, he didn't have that much talent. He had something going for him.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point you have to say, all right, he was legit. He
Yeah.
might have started as a walk-on. He might not look at the priorities, not tall enough, whatever. Kid's a winner. Give him his credit. It's like Danny Werfel. Nobody ever respected Danny Werfel for a college quarterback. Kind of hard to argue with the resume he had. So whether they have a guy that's going to be as clutch as Bennett was, I don't know. But I do think Georgia's clearly the most talented team you're going to face. Let me ask you this, though. I do like this about the SEC schedule changes. We've talked about this before. I hope that whatever the SEC does with their schedules, they wind up doing a throw it all up in the air kind of a thing every year moving forward, like the NFL does. You don't know where you're going to get teams. Yeah. I love the fact that Georgia's gone from early in the schedule to your next to last game.
Yes.
So you got a championship game built in late, because for years and years when Tennessee was good and losing to Florida early, all you ever heard was, well, we get better as the year goes on. It's like, well, it's because you close with Kentucky, Vandy, and South Carolina. Is that why? Is that the deal? You beat Florida that December in 2001 when you got to play them. So is this late season matchup good or bad for Tennessee?
I think it's great for Tennessee, because I think this is the year you can get better as you go on with the pieces that you're having to replace. Even though Milton's been a starter before, your offensive line, you're looking at new receivers.
What's his chemistry with those receivers?
So I think it is a fantastic time to be playing them late.
It's good if you're really good. I mean, last year, Georgia-Tennessee was probably the most hyped regular season game other than Ohio State-Michigan.
Highest ratings.
Yeah, Ohio State-Michigan was the only one that really was in the same ballpark.
To that point, it was number one.
Yeah, and I think that, when you have that late game, you're not just playing for, we'll see how this shapes out. It's like, that's for all the marbles. And I think that adds a ton to the ball game, that there's no mulligans if you screw up in September. In November, it is what it is.
I think Tennessee's a year or two away from it being good. Right now, Tennessee is still trying to build the roster, which means depth is still a question. Depth is not a question for Georgia. If you deal with injuries, Georgia's better at dealing with that right now than Tennessee is.
Yeah, the depth should be better, but you're right. It's still a huge advantage for Georgia that late in the year. But there's not going to be the overlook factor, and that was the case against South Carolina. That would be a game where your players are dialed in. It may not be good enough, probably wouldn't be still, but I like it, and it would, obviously fans want the attention and the status, and that game at that time gives it to you.
I just think for years and years and years, Tennessee didn't play big games in November. You just didn't have many of them. You had Notre Dame a couple of times when you were good and they were good, but there just haven't been that many games in Neyland Stadium late in the season that had national ramifications, or that should have it. I mean, there have been upsets a time or two, but in terms of two powerhouse teams coming, maybe Tennessee isn't to the powerhouse level, but let's assume they're 10-win team again this year. All right. That's a big matchup late in the season. Yeah. I just think for Vol fans, that would be a fun and different atmosphere to go out there in a cold weather game, because let's face it, that's what football is.
Yeah, if Tennessee's up to that level, it's great for Tennessee. It's great for college football.
Yeah. You get into that Georgia game with one loss, and it's out of the division. Everything is before you.
Yeah, it'd be just like last year.
Yes.
All eyes will be on you, and you'll have it all in your hand.
You don't have to go into that game undefeated for it to mean everything.
And if you play a game in that window where everybody's watching, and like last year, you can say, hey, Tennessee, we need a couple offensive linemen. We could use some, pieces here. People are watching. People are paying attention, and that has real value on the recruiting trail.
All right. Very good. All right, when we come back, we got 4 rapid-fire questions, and we've got a ton of time to do it, so this is good. We'll talk about everything from Joe and Nico to the toughest back-to-back games, Vegas odds, you name it. We got it all next on The Sports Source.